Hi, I'm Cindy Morales, and this is the Shout My Story podcast, where we share stories of women who choose life in difficult circumstances and the people who help them. If you enjoy these stories, please like, subscribe, and share our YouTube channel, Shout My Story. You can also listen on the Spotify and Apple podcasts. Now let's get to our guest. So today, my guest is Sarah Falwell. She originally shared her story with me in 2020, and it is in print on our website, shoutmystory.org. Sarah is married to David, and they have 6 kiddos. They live in a little farm in central Illinois where they homeschool their children. And Sarah's story, which she's going to share, she had a medical problem with her 6th pregnancy and ran into some trouble. So, hi, Sarah. Welcome to the show.
Hi. How are you?
Let's just start. Good, thanks. Let's start with you're pregnant with your 6th child. So you're not unfamiliar with how pregnancy is supposed to work.
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, at 17 weeks, I had some bleeding, and they checked me out and said that I just had a subchronic hematoma. And they said everything looked good. Most of the time they dissolve on their own and there's no problem. So I went home and I kind of just started taking it easy then, just because, just it's normal to worry about those things anyway. But 2 weeks later, at 19 weeks, my bag of waters broke. The medical term for that is PPROM, premature rupture of membranes. It was a full rupture. I was at home by myself with all of the kids, hanging laundry on the line. And I called my doctor. She said, do not go to the emergency room. Come straight to the office. So I drove myself to the to the doctor's office. I drove myself to the doctor's office and got an exam. My doctor was very encouraging because she had come from a high-risk doctor's office who worked with incidents like this. And she's like, oh, honey, we got this. We do this stuff all the time. It's not that big a deal. She said she was very optimistic and she was very encouraging. But she did want me to go to a high-risk doctor at a very well-known hospital that is known for their highest NICU rating in the country. I went that night, drove all the way to St. Louis, 2 hours away. And I went, and as I was sitting, one thing that sticks in my mind is I was sitting in the waiting room and a nurse told the receptionist, she's here to say she's going to be delivering today. And I was like, my doctor had sent over the files and they just immediately assumed I was going to be delivering my child at 19 weeks, which would have been the end of her life. And I was not having any contractions, and they did the ultrasound and they did all of the tests, and she was still kicking. My water levels were low, but they were still there, and that was when they started pushing termination. They had, I said, I'm not staying and I'm not terminating, but they still were hinting and telling me, that's the best thing. You're going to end up with an infection. She's going to end up killing you in the long run if you don't do this. She said, if she does survive, they said she would have no quality of life because she'd never learned how to breathe on her own. I said, I'm not staying, I'm signing out, AMA. And so I did, and I went home and I put myself on bed rest. My doctor wanted to see me for weekly ultrasounds, but I had been told that I was going to go into labor within the next 48 hours. And so I literally went home stating to the doctors I was going to go home and have her with my family close by because that hospital is 2 hours away from my family. And this
so time out. So Sarah, so you thought for sure your baby was going to die at that point, and you just wanted to go home and deliver at home?
Yes. Yes. They had basically given me no hope. They said, it's inevitable. She's not going to survive. They said that you will be delivering within the next 24 to 48 hours. So I went home.
So have you had home births before? Because most people would want to be in the hospital in that case.
No.
Okay.
No, I just couldn't. I didn't want any medical intervention. If I was going to lose her, I wanted to. 19 weeks, the baby would have been fully formed, and in 19 weeks, her sisters could have met her, and we could have done things a little bit more humane instead of so medicine intervention, all that stuff. So I just went home and I put myself on bed rest, and I basically was mourning the loss of my child, even though she was still kicking and thriving inside of me. So I went home, and my doctor wanted to do weekly ultrasounds and just still keep an eye on me. So every week, so for the first week, well, they did tell me, she did send me to go see one of their clinics there at the same hospital, up there at the high-risk hospital. And I went about a week later and got an ultrasound, and the ultrasound tech was like, "Are you sure your water broke?" And I'm like, "Yes, my water has broke." And she's like, "Well, your water levels are almost in normal ranges. They're replenishing." And so she gave me some hope. She gave me some excitement. But in the time it took me from go to the ultrasound tech asking me if I'm sure my water broke to the doctor, she was like, "This is it. You're not going to be able to save this child. She's going to give you an infection. She's going to kill you." I was like, "But my water levels are stabilizing." And she's like, "Well, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. We are going to treat this pregnancy as if your waters are still broken." I was crying so hard because I had had some hope. And by the time I got to her office, there was no hope again. And she looked at me and she said, "Well, do you want me to paint rainbows and butterflies, or do you want me to tell you the truth?" And I just started sobbing. I said, "I just don't want my baby to die, and I just couldn't." I left that doctor's office feeling so hopeless. On the way, and she told me, she goes, "Well, if you do make it to 24 weeks, we'll admit you into the hospital for the rest of your pregnancy." And so in their mindset, it was as if 24 weeks was when she would be worth their time, kind of is how I took that. Mm-hmm. I went home and just literally sat on the couch in a catatonic state for 2 more weeks until I was almost 23 weeks. And I went for my weekly ultrasound with my doctor, and she started discussing me getting admitted to that hospital. And I just broke down in her office, and I said, "No, I don't have peace about going there. I don't want to go there. They wanted to kill my baby. I just don't want peace about it. I don't want to go there."
Yeah, Sarah, they had told you like 3 weeks before that? 3 weeks you were going to go home and have the baby in 24 to 48 hours? 3 weeks had gone by?
Yes.
So didn't that give you hope?
2 weeks. No, yeah, it was. It was 19 weeks to right about 23 weeks was when I went to my doctor and said that I couldn't go to that doctor's office again. So that was 3 weeks, almost 4 weeks. When
that's the difference between the baby being born and not surviving and the baby being born and surviving right there. Mm-hmm. So you must have had a lot of hope by then.
No, well, kind of. But like I said, they still said that her lungs would never develop, and because there was no water levels. And so, my weekly visits with my doctor, she gave me a lot of hope and encouragement. And when I went to that 23-week ultrasound, I just broke down in her office and I said, "I can't go to that hospital. I know that's where the best NICU, but I can't go to that hospital. I have no peace over it." And she said, "Oh, honey, we got all kinds of hospitals that are good NICUs. Where you want to go? We can go anywhere. We got all these pro-life hospitals that we can go to." I was like, "Really?" She goes, "Yeah, our Springfield ladies are here now. Let me go get one of the nurses." And they had already left for the day. This was at 23 weeks. By the time I got home from that doctor's office, Springfield Hospital called me Said, you go right now to your local hospital. You're not getting admitted, but you go right now to your local hospital and get your first betamethasone shot because we're going to save this baby. The betamethasone shot is the steroid shot for strengthening the baby's lungs. And this is the first time I had been offered it at 23 weeks.
So I'm just wondering, would it have been appropriate for the high risk hospital to offer that shot at 19 weeks? I'm not familiar enough medically to know if they should have waited until then.
I don't know what their guidelines are. I just know that just the change in hospital and the change in a non-pro-life hospital and a pro-life hospital, which there's a big difference. They were just immediately, let's save this baby. And this was a week before they had planned on admitting me at the other hospital. So at 23 weeks, a full week before the other hospital was basically saying she was worth their time, they said, we're admitting you tomorrow. We're going to save this baby. And so I went and got my shot and went home, told my kids goodbye, and we loaded up the next morning and planned on spending up to 11 weeks living in the hospital. And that was another 2-hour trip away. And that was in Springfield. That was 2 hours from our home too. So they admitted me, and it was basically like they admitted me. They did all the tests, but basically I was there just in case something happened, so that she would be close to a NICU instead of having to instead of it being such an emergent situation. So I was admitted. They gave me my IV and it was basically just living in a maternity home with all the amenities. Like, I had to be monitored twice a day, but other than that, I was free to do as I wanted. I got to roam the hospitals. I'd get to go outside. They just monitored me twice a day, and just in case something happened. Well, 3 weeks into that 2 weeks into that hospital stay, is when COVID started. They started locking things down for COVID. My husband and my 15-year-old daughter were taking turns staying with me a week at a time for support systems so that my husband could help his mom take care of our girls. The first week my husband stayed, then they switched in the weekend. He brought my girls up to see me, and it was just like, it was wonderful. My 3-year-old at the time, actually, it was her birthday, and the nurses, they set up their break room. They decorated it for us to celebrate her 3rd birthday in the hospital. And I got to just enjoy that weekend seeing my girls. And they went home, and my 15-year-old daughter, she ended up staying for that next week. And
okay, they weren't able to come back though after that, right? Because of COVID.
No. So my husband was not even able to switch back with my daughter. So she was basically in it for the long run. But when
she couldn't leave once they shut it down for COVID, she had to stay.
She had to stay, or else she couldn't come back in. And I had to have somebody. So she ended up staying with me, but they locked the hospital down. And my ultrasounds were all going so well. We would pray for our water levels to be a certain level, and every time I'd get an ultrasound, they would be just 1 point higher than what we prayed for. So we started to say that every time I'd pray for something, God would do above and beyond for us, because we would pray for our water levels to be, say, at a 4, and they would always be at a 5. And it was always a little bit higher than what we prayed for. And so after about halfway through that week, my daughter stayed for the first week. I did my ultrasound, and the doctor said, we might get to send you home early, and we never get to do this. He said, it almost looks as if your water bags have sealed back up. And the previous doctor at the other hospital said there was only one way of determining if my water had sealed back up, and that was this very invasive test that could have broke your waters again. And I refused to have that test because I didn't want to risk losing what waters we had left. So I got to go home and lay on the couch for 3 weeks. Spend so much time with my girls. And I remember the night very, very vividly. We were sitting down having just quality time in the living room, and I was resting, and I felt that gush. A storm was coming in, and I felt that gush again, and I thought my water had broke again, but it was not water. It was blood. It was a lot of blood. And so we loaded everybody up in the car and took the kids to grandma's and rushed to the hospital. And by the time I had gotten to the hospital, I felt my water break again. And this was at 28 weeks. At 28 weeks, my water broke again, and I was having a placental abruption. They were gonna life flight me, but the storms were keeping all the helicopters down on the ground. So I ended up waiting for an ambulance from the hospital in Springfield to come get me and take me back. And it was quite an experience. And they took me back to the hospital 2 hours away. And their protocol is buy that baby as much time in that mama as you can, because they said for every 1 day inside of the mom is equivalent to 3 days outside of the womb. So every day, I went back to the hospital. They stabilized me, monitored me continuously. And it wasn't like the first time where I was free to do whatever I want anymore. I was very, they monitored me. And every evening about the same time, I'd start abrupting again and bleeding heavily again. And on the fourth night of them stabilizing me and just going through this cycle every single night, I just broke down. I was sobbing. I was like, just get her out of me. It's 29 weeks. She'll be okay. I can't do this anymore. I have no more fight left in me. I can't do this anymore. And they're like, you're just exhausted. You need to rest. Let's give you some anxiety medicine and get you over a labor and delivery, and we'll just monitor you through the night so you can get some rest. So they got me all situated, and I was laying there asleep, and I woke up feeling like I had to go to the bathroom, and I woke up, and there was just so much blood all at once that it felt like I had lost the baby on the floor. It was just so much pressure and so much. And it went really quickly to an emergency C-section from there on. But there was so many medical personnel in there waiting to revive this baby, waiting for this lifeless baby to come into the world. And she came out screaming her head off. She came out, and they were all their mouths were open. They were just amazed that she just came out, and she was screaming, and she was healthy, and she never even required to be intubated or anything like that. At 29 weeks, 3 days she was born. She, like I said, never required any resuscitation. 3 pounds, 3 ounces, 14 inches long. And she it was amazing because in the NICU, during rounds, because she only ended up staying in the NICU 5 weeks. So she came home from the hospital 6 weeks before her due date. And I made a friend with the baby next to me's mother. And she was there during rounds when I wasn't. And she said she heard them talking, and the doctors were like, wouldn't it be amazing to send a baby home before 34 weeks? And she went home at 34 weeks one day. I brought this tiny little 4-pound baby home. 34 weeks one day, and she rocks the NICU. She has no developmental delays. I'd been told through the whole pregnancy that she would never be able to breathe on their own, even if she did survive. And when she was born, she never even required any intubation or anything. She did have like the protocol where they did the nasal cannula and the CPAP. The CPAP was only for maybe a day, and then the nasal cannula was within a week she was off of oxygen completely. And there was just absolutely just she defied all the odds. And after I settled in, I found a group on Facebook of other moms, premature rupture of membrane moms, and about 75% of them are success stories. And they're posting their beautiful pictures of their beautiful babies that were supposed to have no chance of living. And my thoughts are always, how many women would have just trusted that doctor and just did what they were told, just robotically done what they were told because they didn't know any better? How many women would have just went and let them take that baby and terminate that baby? What they would have missed out on.
I think that's a lot of women, especially if they were like first-time moms and they had, you're kind of trained to trust your doctor. And that's one of the things I wanted to ask you. You were not a first-time mom. You're a pretty well-seasoned mom. Do you think if you had been a first-time mom and you had had that level of trust for the doctor that you might have gone along with the first doctor's suggestion? They didn't tell you to, it wasn't abort so much. It was basically deliver the baby early and then the baby would die.
Basically,
for sure.
Yeah. That's what they would have done. They would have basically just induced me instead of go through the actual abortion process. It still, to me, would have been an abortion because
it is
of the fact that, she was, I'm sitting there on the ultrasound. Her heart is still beating strong. Her heart never wavered. She never wavered on those ultrasounds. She was always kicking, always, her heart was beating, and I don't know. It was just, I don't know what they were looking at to say that. It was just, it's hard to know when you don't know anything from the medical field at all. I have one doctor who had my back, and that was my own doctor here at home. And she was the only one that gave me the hope that doctor-wise that she could survive.
I'm not a doctor either, so I only know anecdotally what I've been told. But I have another story of a kid whose name is Rachel Mary, whose mom we had on recently. Very similar situation. She was 22 weeks. I don't remember if her water broke, but maybe it did because she was told the same thing. You have to terminate. You're going to have an infection. You're going to die. The baby's going to die. And if the baby is born, the baby will be retarded or whatever, because they used the R word back then. And this woman just graduated with her master's degree in public health. Her name is Rachel Mary. But she was delivered at 26 weeks, which back then, this was 26 years ago or 25 years ago. That's really young to be delivered and survive. But she did. And her mom, Suzanne, was given absolutely no hope that there was absolutely none. Baby's going to die. You're going to die. Everybody's going to die, And she likes to, send little notes to the doctors like, hello, we're doing great here. We're doing good. But she also was a person of great faith. And I'm thinking the fear of being told if you don't abort, you're going to die. That's a very scary message to be given. And it's totally understandable if you go along with it because you don't want to die. You have other kids at home. They need their mom, So what made you have the strength to say no?
Everyone says that it was strength. It wasn't strength in any way, shape, or form. It was the fear of losing her was bigger and stronger. I had already fell in love with her. She was my child. She was my baby. And I already loved her so much. And it was more the fear of losing her than it was the strength to go through it. I have definitely made, I can't describe it. It was just a no-brainer for me. I don't know. Like I said, it was a no-brainer. I was more afraid of losing her than I was anything else.
Do you think that being a faith-based person, that informed your decision in any way? And if so, how did that work? How did that help?
Oh yeah, definitely. God gave me the strength to get through it because there's a song that I literally played on a loop constantly, just to get me through it on the really bad days. And it was God sees the storm from the other side is what the song is. And it says he already sees the rainbow when we only see clouds. And you can't make this up. The day we brought her home from the NICU, we got home and there was some rain and there was a double rainbow outside my house. I've got pictures of it and everything. And I'm just like, that, you can't make it up. I just can't even get over it. Like, it's amazing to me that, we looked out and there was this double rainbow outside of the window of our house. And it was just, the timing was just impeccable for that. And, when she was in the NICU, it was during COVID. And so the Ronald McDonald House was shut down. We had to live in a camper at a campground for that 5 weeks. And the hospital had set it up so we got like 30% off at the campground and stuff. So that camper became my safe place. That camper became my home away from home, but I couldn't bring my kids. So we'd go home and we'd pick up 2 of the kids for 1 week. And then we'd pick up 2 of the kids for the next week. And I only spend time with 2 kids at a time until she was out of the NICU. And we got home. We were all together again. The baby was safe. The baby was home. We were all okay. And then there's this double rainbow outside of our home. It was just,
it's a great
it
hope.
was just crazy. Yeah, it was just.
What advice, Sarah? We just have about a minute left. What advice would you give to moms that are given that being in your situation, then being told at 19 weeks, you got to abort, you're going to die? What would you say to them?
Take it minute by minute. It's not even a day by day thing. It's just take it minute by minute because, the doctors, they have statistics and they have numbers and they have a head knowledge, but not a heart knowledge sometimes. They don't always know because, Everly, I was told they had nothing. There was no chance for anything. And she has 0 developmental delays. She is extremely intelligent, perfect, healthy. There's nothing wrong with her, nothing. And they told me there was no chance that she would even be able to breathe on her own.
Well, that's practically speaking, I guess one piece of advice is get a second opinion, because if you had only had that one doctor and not your other doctor, who knows what you have. I mean, the pressure must have been intense.
The hospital with the top NICU rating of the country, I realized there's a reason that their NICU survival rate is so high. And it's, they don't invest their time in the ones that don't have the higher percentage rates of survival.
That's an interesting observation, and it might be true. Self-selecting for good statistics. Okay, so we are out of time. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I greatly appreciate it. I'm happy to meet you in person after hearing your story several years ago. Like I said, you can read it on our website, shoutmystory.org, in print. And I really thank you for being on the show.
Thank you.
If you have a story to share, please contact me at info@shoutmystory.org. Thanks for listening. Choose love, choose life.